The iron manufacture, for want of the art of smelting by coal, and of a supply of wood, which the march of agriculture daily diminished, dwindled away, until, in the middle of the 18th century, it was revived at Colebrook Dale, by the Darbys. In the intermediate period we were dependent on Russia, Spain, and Sweden for the chief part of the iron used in manufactures. But one of the most curious passages in Dudley's Metallum Martis is the following picture of the Dudley coalfield: "Now let me show you some reasons that induced me to undertake these inventions, well knowing that within 10 miles of Dudley Castle there be near 20,000 smiths of all sorts, and many ironworks within that circle decayed for want of wood, yet formerly a mighty woodland country. Secondly, Lord Dudley's woods and works decayed, but pit coal and ironstone or mines abounding upon his lands, but of little use. Thirdly, because most of the coal mines in these parts are coals 10, 11, and 12 yards thick. Fourthly, under this great thickness of coals are many sorts of ironstone mines. Fifthly, that 1/3 part of the coals gotten under the ground are small, when the colliers are forced to sink pits for getting of 10 yards thick, and are of little use in an inland country, unless it might be made use of by making iron therewith. Sixthly, these colliers must cast these coals and slack out of their ways, which, becoming moist, heat naturally, and kindle in the middle of these great heaps, often setting the coal works on fire, and flaming out of the pits, and continue burning, like Etna in Sicily, or Hecla in the Indies. At present, for more than 10 miles round Dudley Castle, ironworks of one kind or another are constantly at work. No remains of mighty woodland are to be found. The value of the 10-yard coal is fully appreciated, but the available quantity is far from having been worked out. The untouched mineral wealth of Lord Ward in this district was valued 10 years ago at £1,000,000 sterling. The small coal is no longer wasted, but carefully raised from the pits, and conveyed by the numerous canals, tramroads, and railroads to ironworks, glassworks, and chemical works. But still heaps of waste, moistened by rain, do smoke by day, and flaming by night, in conjunction with hundreds of fiery furnaces, and natural gases blazing, do produce on a night's journey from Dudley to Wolverhampton, not the effect of one Etna or Hecla, but of a broad inferno, from which even Dante might have gathered some burning notions. The political croakers who are constantly predicting that the last inevitable change, whether it be municipal corporation reform, a tithe commutation, or a corn tax repeal, will prove the ruin of England, should study the geographical march of our manufactures, and mark how, on the whole population, the rise of a new staple in one district, or the invention of a new art, constantly creates a new demand for labour. The exhaustion of our forests, instead of destroying, founded one great element of our world-wide commercial influence. We make no apology for this digression, knowing that to many minds facts connected with the rise of the iron trade will have as much interest as notes on the scene of a battle or the birthplace of a second-rate poet. Besides, as we omit to say what we do not know, it is necessary that we should say what we do. Besides mining and smelting iron ore, a considerable population in and around Dudley is engaged in the manufacture of glass and of nails, the latter being a domestic manufacture, at which men, women, and children all work at home. The castle dates from a Saxon prince, Dodo, A.D. 700, but like the bird of the same name, the original building is extinct. But very interesting ruins of a Norman gateway, tower, and keep are in existence, and form, with the caves, a show place leased by the South Staffordshire as an attraction to their excursion trains. The caves are lighted up on special occasions, and were honoured by a visit from the geologists of the British Association, when last they met at Birmingham. A fossil, called the Dudley locust, is found in great quantities and varieties in the limestone quarries, which form part of the mineral wealth of the neighbourhood. The broad gauge line through Birmingham and Oxford will shortly afford Dudley a direct and rapid communication with London. To passengers this will be a great convenience, but a mode of conveyance so unwieldy, clumsy, and costly is singularly ill fitted for a mineral district, as experience among the narrow tramways of the north has amply proved. Dudley returns one member to Parliament, whose politics must, it is supposed, be those of the holder of the Ward estate. Returning from Dudley through Walsall to Bescot Bridge, the rail pursues its course through a mining country to Bilston and Wolverhampton. On the road we pass in sight of the Birmingham Canal, one of the finest works of the kind in the kingdom. An enormous sum was spent in improving this navigation, in order to prove that any railway was unnecessary. The proprietors, under the influence of their officials, a snug family party, shut their eyes and spent their money in opposing the inevitable progress of locomotive power to the last possible moment. Even when the first London and Birmingham railway was nearly open, a scheme for a new canal was industriously hawked round the county, and although there were not enough subscribers found to execute the work, a small percentage was sufficient to furnish a surveyor's new house very handsomely. Still, there is no probability of the canal ever ceasing to be an important aid to the coal trade in heavy freights. Wednesbury, pronounced Wedgbury and spelt Wednesbury in Domesday Book, stands at the very heart of the coal and iron district, and is as like Tipton, Darlaston, Bilston, and other towns where the inhabitants are similarly employed, as one sweep is like another. Birmingham factors depend largely on Wedgbury for various kinds of ironwork and heavy steel toys. The coal pits in the neighbourhood are of great value, and there is no better place in the kingdom to buy a thoroughbred bulldog that will kill or die on it, but never turn tail. The name is supposed to incorporate that of the Saxon god Woden, whose worship consisted in getting drunk and fighting, and to this day that is the only kind of relaxation which many of the inhabitants ever indulge. The church stands upon a hill, where Ethelfleda, Lady of Mercia, built a castle to resist the Danes, A.D. 914, about the time that she erected similar bulwarks at Tamworth and other towns in the Midland counties, but there are no antiquities worth the trouble of visiting. Parties who take an interest in the progress of education in this kingdom, among those classes where it is most needed, that is to say, masses of miners and mechanics residing in districts from which all the higher and most of the middle classes have removed, where the clergy are few, hard worked, and ill paid, where the virtues of a thinly peopled agricultural district have been exchanged for the vices, without the refinements, of a crowded town population, should traverse this part of Staffordshire on foot. They will own that, in spite of the praiseworthy labours of both Church and Dissent, in spite of the progress of temperance societies and savings banks, a crowd of children are daily growing up in a state of ignorance, dirt, and degradation fearful to contemplate. To active philanthropists, not to seekers of the picturesque, archaeologists and antiquarians, do we address ourselves. Still, we ought to add that in the ironworks and rolling mills there are studies of half-naked men in active motion at night, with effect of red firelight and dark shade, in which the power of painting flesh and muscular development might be more effectively displayed than in the perpetual repetition of model Eves and sprawling nymphs. Wolverhampton formerly lay away from railroads at a convenient omnibus distance, but competition has doubly pierced it through and through. One line connects it with Shrewsbury, another on the point of completion will connect it with Dudley, Birmingham, and Oxford, and another with Worcester. Add to these means of communication the canals existing before railroads commenced, extending to Hull, Liverpool, Chester, and London, and it will be seen that Wolverhampton is most fortunately placed. The great railway battle of the gauges commenced at Wolverhampton, and has been carried on ever since at the cost of more than £1,000,000 sterling in legal and parliamentary expenses, besides the waste of capital in constructing 3 railways where one would have been sufficient, and the extra cost of land traversed where a price was paid, first for the land, second for the revenue, third for compulsion, fourth for influence, and fifth for vote, if the landowner were a member of either House of Parliament. At the end of the battle, a competing line to London has been established, which will end shortly in a compromise, and if one district has 2 railways, others, much needing, have none. The shareholders on both sides of